So I wanted to take a few minutes to sit down and record this video because actually in the last week or so, I've had some conversations that really helped me open my eyes to the truth, to my own situation and what's really been going on mentally for me here as a MEXT scholar who's lived in Japan for 6 years. And I think my perspective can be really helpful for people who are considering coming to Japan on MEXT or considering doing their graduate degree here in Japan or just coming to live in Japan as a student, especially in higher education for some time, a few years. And I just think it'll be really helpful because this is a perspective I didn't have before. So, how are things for me? If I'm being brutally honest, things are not good. I kept wondering how I was going to make this video. It's actually been a few months I've been having all of these thoughts in my head about how I'm struggling and things are not going well, and I'm not sure whether or not I'll be able to finish all of that. And I've been struggling with these thoughts for a long time, and I've been trying to just figure out how to put it into a video that could really accurately convey my thoughts in a way that might actually be helpful for somebody else, which is why I hadn't made it yet. But today I got off the phone with my mom, as I often do, and I was telling her that I had an insight last week. I think it was last week I was hanging out with a couple of my Japanese friends. And I was telling him about my insomnia. I've had insomnia for like over 10 years at this point. The very first time I had insomnia was when I went to Japan for the very first time in 2014. And at the time, I studied abroad there for 10 months. And that was the first time in my life I ever had the conscious idea that I had insomnia. I had trouble sleeping for the first time for prolonged periods of time, and it was chronic. And the insomnia has still continued today. It's not as bad as it was initially. It's not in the same form. It changes forms here and there, but in terms of chronic like problems sleeping, I still struggle with that today. So 2014 was 11 years ago now. So it's not quite 11 years. 10 to 11 years from the time where I first went to Japan. So that's already abnormal. Like, no one in my family has insomnia. Like, it's very weird that I just randomly had insomnia and it's lasted a decade. And I was telling them about this because this has been a struggle I've had, obviously, for a long time, and it's made my life difficult. And we were just having a casual conversation, and one of my friends was like, oh, you should try to relax before you go to bed. Because she thinks that maybe one of the reasons I can't sleep is because my brain is too active at night. And she's 100% right, because my mom actually brought this to my attention for the first time maybe like a year or so ago. After me being here for, at that point, I'd been here for 4 or 5 years. And I'm telling her I'm struggling, I'm still not sleeping well, like life is hard, this and that. And she was like, I think that maybe you don't sleep well because you like have too many thoughts in your head. Like your brain is overactive when you're trying to go to sleep, and that's why you can't fall asleep for like 4 hours or like till 6 a.m. or this and that, like regularly, right? And that was really a novel thought to me because I had never had that thought on my own. I really honestly couldn't see what the problem was. And so the fact that two people who are close to me and dear to me and love me have been able to have thought that about me on their own, like with no sort of communication with each other, tells me that that's very much true. And I had seen it myself, right? So I'd actually been working on that. And after I had that awareness, my sleep onset insomnia, so how long it takes you to go to bed, actually has improved a lot in the past like year or so. once I knew that that was the issue, right? So my friend had told me, and this is the second time she's told me, she's like, you should really try to relax before bed and clear your mind, right? Take baths and, like, remove distractions and really just wind down. And so I was like, yeah, you're right. That's an issue. But then the new idea that I had that day, right? The new thought introduced to me was my second friend who, this is the first time I've talked to him about my sleep problems and insomnia and stuff. And he was like, when you go home to America, like, do you still have insomnia? Like, what's it like when you go to sleep? And I was like, actually, when I go home, I sleep really well. It's strange. I don't feel like I have insomnia when I go home. And he was like, oh, so the issue is just like, it's really just the stress of it being in Japan. Like, it gives you insomnia. Like, it keeps you from going to sleep. There's just so much happening when you're here that it prevents you from sleeping well. And that low key blew my mind. Because once again, it's hard to see problems when you're the one facing them, right? It's much easier to spot issues when you're giving advice to, like, other people, right? Because you're looking from the outside. But when it's you, it's really hard to see what's right in front of your face. And so it's been all these years, right, that I've had these issues. And they're just like, from the outside perspective, they can see. They're like, your life is really hard here. And there's a lot of things that you struggle with, I guess, on the daily, mentally, and it's affecting you. And in my case, it affects my sleep. That's not the only area in my life it affects. That's just the longest standing, longest running problem that I've had throughout this entire time, right? It's manifested in me being unable to sleep properly for many years. And I'm so grateful for my friends and obviously my mom and my family and people who love me, because without them, I literally to this day would still not know. And it's because this, I think, leads to maybe one point I want to make is just, if you come here on MEXT, right, chances are extremely high that you are an overachiever, perfectionist, like type A individual type. And that means you're used to doing a lot and doing really well. And those kind of people, because I am one, I know that we're really hard on ourselves, and it's not easy for us to figure out when to take a break or when to cut back, when to give a little less and just kind of slow down. Like, I think maybe a lot of us have been sort of like conditioned to always be going, like always shooting for the best, always shooting for the top, just being on 10 when it comes to school, achieving, just, trying ambition in life. Like, we're not very good at knowing when to call it quits. And so if you're that kind of individual, chances are high that when you come here, one of the things you're going to struggle with is your mental health. Maybe your health in general. Like, when you come here, suddenly you have to take care of everything by yourself. And it's a whole different world from when you just went to college and you were taking care of things by yourself, right? You probably moved away from home, moved to a different state. I don't know where you're from, a different country, wherever, or a different area in your country or state. And we may have moved away on one aspect, but a lot of us were still supported by our parents. In my case, I went to school in a different state, but my parents were always there. I never once felt like I was on my own, right? I had student loans, so I didn't have to worry about money. They paid for my apartment. Like, they were always supporting me in the background, even though we were no longer physically in the same location or very close together. When you move here for MEXT, like, I think this is the first time where I felt like I was really on my own. Even though I'm not, if I really needed something, I could call my parents and, like, inconvenience them if I needed to. But this is the first time where I had, the scholarship stipend gives you your own money. And so with that, and then now you're out of the physical location of where your family is, you feel like you're finally like on your own. And, you're on this country on the other side of the world, depending on where you are, that's only accessible by plane, very much isolated in the ocean. And you come here to live by yourself, but not just live, like you come here to further your education via grad school. So either you're here getting a master's degree, maybe you're a research student, or you're going for the PhD. You're here to do something new that you haven't done before, and it's something that requires a lot of mental excellence and work, right? It's not something easy. You're not just coming over here to like do high school or, language school or something that's just fun. Like a graduate degree is a whole lot of work and it's a big commitment. Obviously, it's going to differ depending on the department you go to, your major and stuff, but in general, I think graduate degrees are very difficult. So, for those of you who may not know, I'm in a PhD program and my major is medical science and I'm in the field of medicine. And I think most people would agree that's a difficult place to be. But even if you're not, I've had friends in engineering, I have a friend in humanities, everyone's struggling. Every MEXT scholar that I am close to, I've been close to, it has not been a smooth ride. Things are hard and we struggle in different ways. So, when you come here on MEXT, I think you're going to start to feel the pressure as time goes on. It's probably not going to be the first year, and it might not even be the first few years, depending on how long you're here. Starting April, so next month, I'm going to be starting my 7th year here. I didn't start feeling like I had mental illness until like year 4. Like the first 2 years, I was kind of chilling. Third year was okay as well, I think. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Actually, third year was a little hard because that's when I graduated with my master's. All the years of the PhD have been just absolutely awful. So, yeah, I wasn't really feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not fine until about like year 4. So, I just want to, in case nobody has told you, because the reality of what it's like living here on MEXT is something that you don't really hear about. It's something you experience for like firsthand after you've committed and you're here, right? And this isn't to say, I'm not saying this to deter anyone. I just think that knowledge is power. And the more you know beforehand, the more you can kind of plan ahead to kind of, protect yourself against these problems when they do show up at your door, because they will show up at your door. um, yeah, so I just want to say that MEXT it's a huge blessing. I wouldn't take back the experience for anything, and if I could do it all over again, I would every single time. It's just if I could do it better, I would obviously choose to do it better. But coming to Japan and being able to further my graduate education without having to take on more student loans up until this point has been a huge blessing in my life. And I love Kyoto and I love living in Japan. But I'm starting to realize through the help of my family and friends, and even a lot of my subscribers, you guys who've commented on my videos and stuff, like I may love Japan, but Japan doesn't love me the same way I love Japan. So, sometimes you just have to accept reality for what it is. A lot of us want to come here and maybe we're even thinking about living here forever, a long term, whatever, but you have to, see reality for what it is eventually. So, do I really want to stay here and suffer my whole life? no, is even though the answer to would I like to live in Kyoto in like a cute Japanese apartment my whole life, the answer is yes. But that doesn't really, go hand in hand with reality. And so you have to take that into consideration. So, yeah, I just want to put that out there that if you come on MEXT and you're here for many years, just be aware that it's probably going to erode your health in a lot of ways. Not only, so I mentioned in the beginning, so for me, one of my big issues is insomnia just because I have overwhelming stress in my life on the daily, and that's not just from school. I think before we come on MEXT, we're seeing through like the rose colored glasses, right? We don't even think about the bad because we're just so ready and so excited to come live in Japan, right? And start our new life, which I think is great. Optimism is great, but the reality, right? It's good to be optimistic, but it's also good to be aware of what's happening. The reality is you are very isolated, you are very alone. Of course, having friends and stuff helps, but when it comes to living your daily life and whatever struggle comes with like you and your lab, you and your research, which is the main part of your life, right? Unfortunately, we're not just here to get to, live freely in the country. Like, our job is to be a grad student, to be a researcher, right? So, whatever environment you end up with in your school, in your lab, in your supervisor, and your colleagues, like that's most of your life. And if that's toxic, like you're going to have a lot to deal with in your daily life that's already like making you hate where you are, right? So I know friends who literally the first year there was a girl who we had met who had to change schools because her professor was abusive. She was a MEXT scholar. That was the worst case that I think most of us had ever seen. Most of us have experienced, and that was within the first year. It was really bad. And I know another MEXT scholar who he didn't switch schools, but he had to switch labs because he was experiencing um, discrimination and abuse from his professor as well. So that's two people already just in my out of the people that I know. And unfortunately, this is not rare. A lot of MEXT scholars have really bad they get they just have terrible supervisors. And there are people who don't support us here and would prefer that we weren't here, and that is unfortunately the truth. And so if you get placed in a lab where you're happy and things are working well, consider yourself very lucky because there are plenty of MEXT scholars who did not end up in that situation and they had to deal with a whole lot of issues to get in a place where they felt safe or supported. So even me, my situation is not as bad as theirs, but I've experienced some low levels of abuse in my lab. Obviously not physical abuse, but yeah, and feeling the feeling of not being supported fully. So I haven't been able to reach my full potential. I've had these issues in my lab, and I'm a wonderful human being. So obviously, it has nothing to do with you know who you are. It just these things happen. So yeah, it's really common to experience prejudice and hardship just from being foreign here in Japan. And so you've got that on top of, again, the difficulty of actually doing the grad school work, which would be difficult even if you were in your own country speaking your own language. And you were fully supported by like funds and stuff. Like you're doing that over here by yourself. So it's already bad. All of that is hard. And then on top of that, we're here living on our own. We have to manage our finances. The MEXT budget is small when you move out of the dorm. The MEXT budget is great if you're a person who, or maybe if you come from a country where like your currency is weaker than the yen or similar to the yen, actually maybe you'll be having a good time. But if you come from a country like America where your standard of living is higher or your currency is a lot stronger, so living here you feel like you can't get all the things you need on the MEXT budget, you're gonna suffer in that way. You're gonna feel uncomfortable and some sources of anxiety and stress will come from that as well, like monetarily. And yeah, even in addition to that, finding a house, you just deal with a lot of discrimination here that's really kind of under the radar. Um because it's not as outright and blatant as racism, it's something that you don't really kind of acknowledge. I mean, some people will, but me as a black person, I didn't acknowledge it for a really long time because it's not as bad as racism. So I'm like, oh, there's no problem here because, I've experienced worse, is like the way I was thinking, right? But it's very real. And the longer you live here, the more kind of fed up you get with it. And so the example I was going to give is the housing situation, right? So, especially on the MEXT budget, if you want to live in a nice place by yourself, nice will obviously differ depending on what kind of standard of living you're used to. Just know that you're not going to be able to find a very nice place within MEX's budget because most of the residential like apartments and stuff that are available, right, within a nice standard of living that are under, I don't know, like within nanaman yen, like 70,000 yen a month, that are a nice standard of living, you don't have access to as a foreigner in Japan. Landlords and kanrigaisha management companies will outright reject your application. They will refuse to show you the apartment because you're foreign or based on your nationality, right? This is very common. I think at this point everyone's aware that this is a prejudice that Japan has against foreigners. Apparently, it's lawful, and so there's nothing we can do about it. You just have to accept it. So this is one of the things that you'll be dealing with under the radar. And in your first and second year, it's no big deal. You're just happy to have like found a house. But after your fourth, fifth, sixth year, and you want to finally live in a nice place, it gets old really quick. Like it gets old really quick, and on the MEXT budget, you're not able to afford the nicer apartments that are available to foreigners because the MEXT budget like isn't enough for that, right? So there's stress in that sense as well too, right? Obviously, this isn't a daily stress you're dealing with thinking about all the time, like, oh, can I get a nicer house? This and that, but like it's one of those things that you do have to deal with. It's just another like, it could be the needle that breaks the haystack. So that's a stressor that you have to deal with. There's so much. There's so much, and there are things that you don't realize until you've been dealing with them for 5 years and you're like, why am I so fed up? Like, all I want to do is live here, but why do I hate my life here? Like, why do I hate myself? Why am I unhappy? And like, why am I thinking about going home and dropping out? Like, this is not who I thought I would be when I, signed up or applied for MEXT however many years ago. And it's really sad to see yourself become this person because once again, that's the last person you ever imagined you'd turn out to be. So, but it's real, and it's because the stresses that you deal with living here, I don't even know how to I couldn't even explain them all in a video because they're those things that have just sort of crept up on you over the years. You don't consciously think about them, but after dealing with them, on and off for half a decade, you're tired of everything. So, yeah, that is the reality of being a MEXT scholar in Japan long term in a nutshell. Of course, this is a topic I could talk about indefinitely, but I just wanted to get those thoughts out because I think they really sum up well kind of the experience as a whole. I hope that maybe, when MEXT ends and I no longer feel like I'm in financial distress or, living in chronic overwhelm from my research and the all of the things we're lacking in lab, just all the things I feel like I'm lacking in my personal life, and the things I can't do, and the things I feel like I need to do just piling up. It just really comes down to living in a state of chronic stress for like years on end. And if that stress affects your sleep, then it just is exacerbated exponentially, because if you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering. So each day just feels worse and worse and worse. Even if you're doing the same things, you're dealing with the same amount of stress, it feels much harder every day. And that's where I am. Obviously, I told you my insomnia has been over 10 years at this point. Every day I wake up and I'm really surprised that I'm still living. Like, it's bad. So, I hope that you guys who do want to come as MEXT scholars, or maybe you are here, you're in the early years, or you can relate to what I'm saying. I think it's really important for us to prioritize our own health, especially our mental health, because even here in Japan, mental health is still not widely accepted as a part of health we need to give attention to and work on. So it's really up to us to manage our health properly. And as I was trying to say in the beginning, if you're the type A person who was able to, you were so excellent that you got the MEXT scholarship, chances are you're not going to be doing that well, because taking care of your health requires you to know when to stop and take a break. And I have not been good at that my entire life. And it's starting to really become a problem because of the massive amount of stress I've been living in for the past 6 years. So, yeah, I'm going to try to make an effort to, even though this is probably going to be my last year, research is still not going great. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to do my best to try to prioritize my health this year, because I've not done that at all these 6 years, and I am so burnt out. I really want a break. I would love a break, mentally and physically. But yeah, I'm not going to do that right now. So, in order to keep myself from getting any worse than I am now, I'm really going to take it upon myself to try to focus on my own health this year. Because if you don't, you will run yourself into the ground. Your senseis, your peers, no one will check on you and make sure that you're sleeping well, or you're eating properly, or, you're mentally fine. They're just going to continue to let you work yourself into the ground. So, yeah, that's all I want to say. I hope this helps someone. And if you're a MEXT scholar, I would love to hear your about your own experience, your opinion down below. I don't have so many MEXT friends right now in my daily life, and I haven't met anyone really outside of Kyoto, so I'd love to hear about your experience and hear if it's anything similar. But yeah, good luck to you all, and that's all for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Mata ne. Bye!